the city have committed to the people of Soweto and those areas to make sure that they get a reliable electricity supply. We will be signing a memorandum of understanding in the coming week with Eskom to take over these areas so that we ensure that they get a reliable electricity supply. You will notice that in the past few weeks, there has been riots in Soweto. People have been blockading roads because of electricity problems. We want to solve those problems, so we want to take over the supply of electricity through City Power, our entity that supplies electricity.
Well, there you are, the city of Joburg saying they'll be signing that agreement in a few days' time. In fact, from what I read, it was supposed to have been signed probably at the end of September, but we'll get some clarity on it. However, Eskom has come out to say that memorandum of understanding has not yet been signed because there are a number of loopholes, or at least a number of hurdles that the city would still need to get over. So far, there's just really, they've signed, they're in talks, rather, on an interest to possibly transfer the city, the supply of electricity to the city. But, of course, the business case is still being developed. We're joined to talk to this issue now by Chris Yellend, energy expert, as well as Isaac Mangena, spokesperson of City Power. The question is it possible for the City Power to take over power distribution? But what other implications as far as cost is concerned? Chris Yellend, good evening. Thank you for your time. And Isaac, thank you very much for joining us. So that's the situation at this particular point. Eskom saying that there needs to be transaction advisors to develop a business case for this particular transfer of power. What would the business advisor be wanting to tell the city as far as making up this business case? Chris?
Yeah, look, you're right. There's been a lot of very confusing messaging coming out of the city. And I understand why. I think because voters are really sick and tired of what is going on. And this is very much a voter issue, and we are in the middle of local government elections. So we're seeing moves by politicians to make all kinds of statements. I see statements from the ANC, I see statements from the DA, and it's clearly a very important voter issue that is preying on the minds of the politicians, and this is what's causing them to really come out quite strongly. But yes, the transaction advisors are going to have to look at this very, very dispassionately. They will not be looking at this through the eyes of an election. They will not be looking at this through emotion. They will be looking at this through the eyes of financial reality. And I think the decisions are going to be really tough, and the chances of anything happening, even if I were to listen to Eskom, and I have spoken to them, they talk about these are just talks about talks, and they honestly don't see this as very likely at all. But they are obliged to enter into these talks because the city of Johannesburg has raised the matter, so they are obligated to stand by and to at least listen to what the city has to say. But the reality is the city is not in good shape. City Power itself is not in good shape. And this is a matter not about politics, not about emotion, it's about the money.
Isaac Mangena, good to talk to you today, not conducting one of your campaigns of cutting off electricity, at least talking about a possibility of buying bulk electricity and being able to be the sole distributor of electricity in the city of Johannesburg. There's no question that you're already to an extent distributing to some parts of the city, so there is that possibility that this can be achieved, but can it be achieved right now? And what would it really take as far as, one, being able to get rid of the debt that is owed to Eskom, but two, being able to then buy the infrastructure from Eskom that is required and then implement that infrastructure in the city the way that you would want to do it?
Thanks for having us. Let me start by qualifying this by saying that I'm actually talking on behalf of the city of Johannesburg and not politicians, and also City Power. And also to demystify some of the confusing messages that Chris, my colleague Chris there, was basically saying have been out there. There were two processes that were done last week. There was an MOU. So there are two processes with Eskom. There is an MOU which seeks to basically assist the challenges in terms of electricity supply in Soweto. To that end, we have committed to provide material like the mini substations to ensure that there is power supply switched on as a short-term process for the people of Soweto. It is also worth mentioning that last week, when the mayor was in Soweto, a mini substation was provided to the people of Rockville, and many others, at least about 40 of them, will be provided to the people of Soweto, so that there is electricity in Soweto. So it is also worth mentioning that as we provide these mini substations, the network in Soweto still belongs to Eskom, and it is operated by Eskom. All what we did was to basically assist Eskom in terms of the material, like the wood, by the way. It's not something that is new. We have always, when there are emergencies and we don't have material, we'll go to Eskom, we'll go to Tshwane, we'll go to Ekurhuleni, we work with those stakeholders to ensure that we deal with the challenges that are on the ground.
What's the exchange, before you get to the second process? What is the exchange? What is entailed in that memorandum of understanding? Because I'm sure you're not supplying this infrastructure out of the goodness of your heart.
So basically with that memorandum of understanding is that City Power will provide Eskom with mini substations and other material to ensure that they switch on electricity. And I'll come to the reason behind why we're doing that a little bit later. So to ensure that at least they deal with that. But also in that memorandum of understanding, we make it a point that everyone understands that the network belongs to Eskom, and only Eskom can be able to operate on that network. It's actually even an issue of regulations. As you know, that this industry is heavily regulated. So NERSA cannot allow another municipality or another entity like City Power to basically operate on Eskom as infrastructure until certain due processes have been put in place. So that is, and also an understanding that Eskom will basically repay City Power the equivalent of those mini substations that we would have given it. So that is one process. The second process is the one where there is a possibility of a handover of electricity supply, not only in Soweto alone, but also in Sandton, Diepsloot, Cosmos City, Orange Farm, and other areas within the city of Johannesburg. That one is a long-term process. So what we have done so far with Eskom is to both agree to start an exploratory discussions on the possibility of that handover happening. It's not something that we foresee to be happening in the next, let's say, 6 months or so, but it is the process that is we have agreed to embark upon, which will include dealing with complex issues, clarify them, including the regulatory issues in terms of the distribution license that we will maybe get from Eskom, but also the issues of treasury and so forth that are at stake. So those are some of the things that are at stake for us to be able to get into this deal with Eskom.
Now, you're saying you don't speak for politicians, but you speak for the city and you speak for City Power, right? The politicians are saying their claim is that this will bring relief to the Soweto residents. One, it will stop the constant power cuts that are being implemented to compel residents to pay. Two, is that City Power then will become the only supplier of electricity to the people of Johannesburg, and particularly this will benefit the residents of Soweto. How true are those claims?
So the thinking by the city is that we, as the city of Johannesburg, as the municipality, we can do a better job in servicing the people of Soweto. We are already supplying water in Soweto, other municipal infrastructure like water. We are collecting waste in Soweto. We maintain the parks in Soweto. We have clinics in Soweto. We provide service delivery, except electricity, in Soweto. We collect revenue already in Soweto. We have a good credit control and debt management in Soweto. So we don't experience the problems that Eskom is experiencing.
Yeah.
We are closer in terms of dealing with the issues of the people of Soweto, in terms of all other municipal services except electricity. So the thinking there is also that we've got our councillors, the City of Johannesburg councillors stay within those communities where Eskom is providing electricity. When there is challenges with Eskom in terms of provision of electricity to those people, they then infrastructure, they locate other services for the people. The ambulances, City of Johannesburg ambulances are not able to drive in those areas. JMPD cannot go in. Emergency services cannot go in. Water infrastructure gets vandalized and damaged. The houses belonging to our councillors in those communities get burned, petrol bombed, and so on. Yeah. So the thinking is that we might as well take over even the provision
because
of
electricity. Because you believe City Power can do a better job at providing electricity to the people of Soweto than Eskom.
Yes, we can do that. The thinking is that we can be able to plan properly in terms of the provision holistically with other services that we're already providing as the City of Johannesburg in those communities, including Soweto, and we will be able to provide the electricity than what Eskom is doing currently.
All right. Isaac, stay with us. We'll continue in a moment on that note. Get Chris Yellend to weigh in on that as well. In Focus continues in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Live with us tonight on In Focus, City Power Spokesperson Isaac Mangena and Energy Expert Chris Yellend. Chris, the two issues there coming up. The first one being, of course, the first MOU where City Power says, no, we've got substations. We'll go put them in. You'll pay us the equivalent of what those substations are. Is that already not showing City Power's ability to be able to solve some of those challenges that Eskom cannot deal with in Soweto? But then the second claim that, of course, we're already providing everything else. Why not as well provide electricity? We can do a much better job if we incorporate all that into one.
Yeah, look, it's really very confusing, the messaging that has come out from the city on these matters. Now it seems that there are two memorandums of understanding, one relating to the supply of mini substations in emergency conditions, and then another one which is still not signed and a long way off about taking over the Eskom areas of supply. It's really very badly managed by the city, this communication. I mean, there was one communication that said that City Power had already taken over Eskom's area of supply. Eskom came out guns blazing and saying, completely refuting that and saying that's absolutely untrue, what the city has been saying. The next comment I heard from the mayor was that they've taken over Calvin Power Station. And it's clear that politicking and electioneering is in full swing, and I understand why. It's obvious. The question you ask also now is, firstly, these mini substations, it is perfectly normal, as Isaac said, for municipalities and Eskom to help each other, in situations where there's an emergency outage. And one or other party can step in, and that's a good thing. And I'm glad that level of cooperation is taking place. But when it comes to the idea of City Power taking over these areas of Eskom supply, one really has got to ask whether City Power can do a better job. And if you were to speak to customers of City Power, and I must tell you, I am personally a customer of City Power, you will find deep dissatisfaction amongst the residents of the city of Johannesburg who are supplied by City Power with City Power's performance. So it's really hard to imagine that they're going to wave some kind of magic wand and sort out 20, 30 years of problems in Soweto. It's hard to take seriously, but of course I hope they could do it. We wish for a solution because it is a festering wound in South Africa. But to test the matter, I just would like to ask Isaac to test the performance of City Power. National Treasury makes a grant to municipalities, including the city of Johannesburg, of billions of rands for electricity for indigent households. And municipalities spend only a fraction of that on indigent households, providing free basic electricity, and they misappropriate the balance. So I would like to test how well City Power is doing it by asking the question, for how many households does City Power or a City of Johannesburg receive free basic electricity money? How many households does Treasury finance? And how many households does the City of Johannesburg actually pay over in vouchers of free basic electricity? Because the average in South Africa is about 25%. Only 25% of residents who are entitled and for whom the city gets the money actually reaches the intended recipients, and the balance is misappropriated, 75%. What is the percentage in the City of Johannesburg?
So as the city's electricity distributor, Isaac, do you know what the percentage is that the city provides to indigent households?
Look, I know that we do provide for the indigents in terms of electricity and other services like water. And those books are there for Chris and any other person, even the opposition parties in council have got a view of those books. And there's no way that we can get money from Treasury and not account for. We have been accounting for all the cent that we get, including for the indigent households, but also including for the electrification. Remember, we also get the grants every time for us to be able to provide electricity to the new entrants, the informal settlements. So those books are there. But also I want to go back to Chris on the issue of how City Power is doing currently within the city of Johannesburg. I think as the city, we are the first to acknowledge when there are issues, and we have been acknowledging when there are issues. But the issues currently, as I'm talking to you now, we've got fewer issues across the city of Johannesburg, and people like Chris make it look like it's a crisis, and it's not. We've got fewer issues that we have been dealing with. We had storms recently that obviously put us at a backlog, but also load shedding, which is implemented by Eskom, not by our liking as the city of Johannesburg or as City Power. But we have been increasing resources to ensure that we deal with this. But in terms of comparison with Soweto, Chris currently, as he's talking to us now, he's got electricity. The people of Soweto don't have electricity, and they haven't had electricity for the past 2 years, most of them. So is it an ideal situation? Is it something that we want? The answer to that is that no. The people of Orange Farm are also complaining about the same thing. They haven't had electricity for the past 2 years. So we cannot look at it as like it's normal. It's not normal. So something needs to happen, and this is exactly what we're trying to do now as the city of Johannesburg, and purely because of we are currently already providing certain services there, and we are working those streets every day. And we find these people saying to us, we are providing us with water, we are paying for that water. Why can't you just provide us with electricity? Let's pay for that electricity so that you are able to get revenue for that. So that's what we are doing.
As the city's only supplier of electricity in Johannesburg, if indeed that agreement is put in place, how are you going to deal with the question of illegal connections? I mean, as I speak to you now, I think you've been to Alexandra at least 3 times to keep on cutting illegal connections, and you come out with reams of cable every time you go there. And it seems to be a back and forth thing that is not being resolved, largely because people just don't have the money to pay for electricity. In fact, the people of Soweto are calling for a 200 rands monthly flat rate. Will you be able to afford that?
The issue of illegal connections is a very complex one, and is partly because of the fact that Johannesburg as an economic hub is attractive to people coming to the city of Johannesburg looking for those opportunities. And what they do is they set up informal settlements across the city. So now that problem starts with settlements, human settlements, with housing. And that's where it's supposed to be addressed at. And these people, whenever there is an issue about illegal connections, like you rightfully pointed out, we are dealing with it. Eskom is also doing the same thing. Ekurhuleni is doing that almost daily. So it's not something unique to the city of Johannesburg that when there are instances where people are stealing electricity, vandalizing infrastructure, we shouldn't act. And remember, we also get sued if people get electrocuted from these exposed wires. In Alexander, that you gave an example to, we've got 10 million, we are sitting on 10 million rands of lawsuits by the people whose children got electrocuted by illegal connections. So if we don't act on those, these lawsuits will be more, and there will be more children electrocuted, children dying, and even adults. So that's why we have to deal with that. But we also need to address the issue of electrification. We've got budget this year as the city of Johannesburg to ensure that we electrify informal settlements. I'm sure behind Westgate Mall in Rudderboard, you've got a squatter camp there called Princess Squatter Camp. That squatter camp, we will be switching it off on because of we have electrified it from the grant that we get from Treasury and COGTA that we are going to implement and account for later, Mr. Yellend. And those books are there for you to see them.
Chris can come in that there's no way they can take Treasury's money and not account for it. Apparently, the books are open for you to have a look at them, which I'm sure you do.
You know, the facts are very clear. Approximately 25% of the households for which Treasury grants money to municipalities, only 25% of the households for which the municipalities receive the money, does the money actually get to the intended recipients, the indigent households. The balance is not given back to Treasury. There is no accountability, and the money is misappropriated by municipalities and used for purposes that were never intended by Treasury. I'm asking a very specific question to Isaac. What percentage of the households for which Treasury grants money actually receive the money? Just give us the percentage. That will be a measure of performance of how well City Power and the City of Johannesburg are serving indigent, poor people in the city boundaries. That's the question. I'm still waiting for an answer.
All right. We've got about 30 seconds, Isaac, if you want to weigh in on that, and then we'll wrap up this conversation.
I don't have the numbers with me now, but I do invite Chris to come to Council and see the books of how many people, how much money we received from Treasury, and how much against that did we actually give to the indigent people of the city of Johannesburg. We have been doing that, and we're doing that religiously. So I think that Chris is trying to push something here, and it's not there. I think maybe he's talking about another municipality elsewhere, but not in the city of Johannesburg. In the city of Johannesburg, every cent that has been granted to us has been accounted for, and we've got those books for him to come and see.
Isaac Mangena, appreciate you coming through, speaking on behalf of City Power, as well as Energy Expert Chris Yellend there. Hopefully that has cleared up some of that mixed messaging around what MOU is in place as far as the city taking over the role of power supply.